Hello. The following episode was initially recorded for the podcast Education Marketing Leader with Chris Raposo. I am including it here with permission. I was a guest on Chris's podcast, and I felt the discussion was really interesting and wanted to bring it here as well. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Education Marketing Leader podcast with Chris Raposo. If you're looking to dive into the latest industry insights, draw inspiration from education success stories, or just want to sharpen your marketing skills, you're in the right place. Here, we bring you a diverse range of voices from experts and leaders in the field, offering you a unique blend of professional development and practical strategies. Whether you want to understand your audience better, stay updated with the latest tech trends in marketing, or expand your professional network, we've got you covered. So while you're driving on your morning commute or winding down after a busy day, let's explore the dynamic world of education marketing together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Education Marketing Leader with Chris Raposo. Today, my guest is joining me from Washington, D.C. His name is Gjergj Dollani, and he is a higher ed marketing expert at ClearCourse Advisory. Gjergj, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris. Glad to be here. Big fan of the show. Obviously, been following you for a while, so I'm happy we're doing this.
Good to have you. Thank you so much for having me and Rob Clark on your show a couple of weeks ago. But today, the roles are reversed, and I'm going to be asking the questions. But I know that you, as a podcaster, you may have some questions for me as well if the muse hits you. But today's topic will be on how students evaluate colleges today, because a lot has changed over the years. Now, Gjergj and I, we met while I was at the NCMPR National Conference in Washington, D.C., and we met at a cafe in D.C. in March. We had a great conversation around higher ed and student journeys, and he mentioned that students today don't seem obsessed with finding the best college anymore. Feels more like they're trying to avoid making the wrong choice. Gjergj, when did you start noticing that shift?
Yeah, I'll actually take a couple of steps back. It's interesting because we covered this topic with our mutual friend Faton Sopa at Manafera. We had a webinar talking specifically about this issue. They had done, they do their yearly student study research with over 1,200 students, where they try to identify what are some of the basically the starting points in the discovery journey, right? And one of the things that, and I was looking at the research, and I had seen a bunch of research from RNL specifically on the fear drivers, right, of the process. Like, what are some of the things that applicants are trying to avoid in the application process? And one of the things that I noticed is that everything is all driven by fear, right? So some of the questions that were being asked were, will this job that I'm applying, or with this job, which degree I'm actually getting, will exist in the future? Is $200,000 in debt really worth it, right? Because as we know, education is an experiential purchase, right? Unlike a car where you actually pay the money and you get the car, you drive and you say, oh, this, I don't like this, and you return it to the dealer. In education, you don't find out whether, it was worth it or not after 4 years and a couple $100,000 of expenses, and you're out there in the job market and you're realizing that you're not as competitive as you are, right? So what's happening is students are not necessarily looking for the best college, right? They're looking for the right college where they avoid regret. And I thought about that, and I said, 20 years ago when I was applying for, college or my master's program, my entire generation was very hopeful, right? Like, it wasn't fear driven, it was hope driven, and like, we're going to get a degree, we're going to get a great job, we're going to double our salaries, we're going to contribute in one way or another. And this new generation is actually, the choice is driven by fear, right? And that's my hypothesis.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you see the headlines with people are being so much into debt that they cannot get out ever, because the only jobs they're going to get is working at a Starbucks as a barista with their degree, which is completely unfortunate, and it's a terrible outlook if somebody looks at college or university to get the degree. And then, supply and demand, there are so many people that now have a college degree more than ever before. So that's another way to find yourself in that fear based environment.
Just to kind of follow back on that point you're making, it actually, I feel like it's going to get worse. It's not going to get any better, right? Because not only do you have the fear of, will my degree be around when I graduate? Will the job be there when I graduate? You also have this other thing where there's going to be a huge number of colleges and universities that are either going to merge or just close down, right? So now the next question is, am I putting my money on a college that will shut down in 2 years? And you don't know, right? Because it's so hard for you to understand what the finances of the institution are, right? If you look at the list of colleges that have closed in the past 2 to 3 years, there are some that I think the sixth oldest college in America just closed a couple of years ago, right? So if you look at trajectory and you're like, this university is still going to be around, it's been around for 200 years. Well, guess what, right? So I think it really makes college choice much more difficult, and there's a lot of things coming from all sides that are affecting our industry.
Absolutely. Now, since this is a higher ed marketing show, do you think that changes how universities should market themselves? Because that's a very different mindset than the older prestige-driven search was in the past when students are looking for a university.
Yeah, I think they have, right? If you go through their websites, if you go through a lot of the materials, they're all about alleviating those fears, right? Here is what our campus looks like, and here's how happy everybody is, and look at what the outcome is by this graduating class and how much money they're making and what jobs they're getting, and look at all of the support that we're putting in our career services to ensure that you're going to have the skills that you need. So I think that's definitely there, but it does require a retooling of the marketing staff to understand that they're dealing with a different kind of product now that they're selling.
Absolutely. And isn't everything in sales or marketing, you have to address the objection from the get-go. And the other thing is, we always talk about success stories, social proof, but then with this AI-driven world, you don't know what's going to happen in 4 years. How is the job market going to be affected? So today's success story of somebody who went through the program may not be applicable in 4 years when AI has, changed the job market, the labor market again. So is there any way you would address that in higher ed marketing? Maybe say, hey, we're on the cutting edge of AI. We're implementing AI courses within your program, so to make sure that you're ready when you enter the job market. Yeah,
I've read this. I read an article, I want to say 6 months ago, and I'll have to go look back at it, who wrote it, but it was kind of like a light bulb for me. And what the article was talking about is how college will change, just the way higher education is served will change, where it's not 4 years anymore, but it's almost like a subscription service, right? Like you apply for a subscription model and you have it for as long as you need it. You can have it for the next 80 years and you have access to the institution, right, through your subscription model to get retooled all the time. Like there's a new skill that's available, you go take that class. There's a new, you get that micro degree, but it's always available to you through that subscription model, so that you're not sitting in class for 4 years, right? But you're kind of retooling for the rest of your life. And I mean, it made a lot of sense for me. Not to say that the 4-year institution will shut down, right? But there's definitely going to be parallel services that I think will be better at keeping people trained at the pace of technology than what it is right now.
And would these students pick courses from different schools, or would this be for one particular school that continuously offers that subscription model?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as thinking of subscription model, I'm thinking, Spotify, Apple Music, things like that, right? Once you get stuck with something, like I used to listen to
Mhm.
Apple Music, and then I switched to Spotify, and I don't even know where Apple Music is on my iPhone anymore, right? Because I'm already used to the platform. I'm already used to finding the things that I have. So, and one of the things, Chris, that we know is that most universities, roughly about 60% of the students live within 50 miles
Mhm.
of the institution anyway. So there's really kind of a geographical stronghold. Um, I don't know if stronghold is the word, but a hold that universities have specifically in the region where they exist. Now, if you're a big brand like Harvard, and if you're a big brand like some of these big universities, of course you're going to draw people there. But I think most people would be better served with their local institution.
Yeah, that brings me to my next question because you brought up geography and comfort levels in a past conversation. Do you feel do students feel safer staying closer to home now compared to previous generation, and why is that?
Of course, I mean, and this has nothing to do with college itself. I think it has to do with just Gen Z in general, right? Are you familiar with Jonathan Haidt? He has written a couple of books on his latest one was The Anxious Generation,
Mm.
and I'm a huge fan of I think a psychology professor at NYU. I'm a huge fan of his work. One of the things that he talks about is how this new generation, basically people that were born after the 80s and 90s and especially 2000s, are very, very different from the previous generations because,
Mm.
they in one of his books, he said they did a study where they looked at people that were born in the 70s and 80s, and they asked them, when was the first time that you actually got to do something on your own outside of the view of your parents, right? Like,
Um,
went to a friend's house on a bike or bought something at the convenience store or something like that. And the average age was 8, okay,
mhm.
8 or 9. And then they asked people who were born after the 2000s, when was the first time they did something completely on their own? The average age was 14, right? So think about it this way. Now, 4 years later, you're going to tell these kids to leave Alabama, go to Michigan State, live on their own, pay their bills, and take care of themselves.
Mhm.
Their anxiety level is like,
Mhm.
because they're just not used to being independent, right? Um, so I think and I think you see this happening. I think most people are actually opting to go to universities that are close
Yeah.
to their house. Or if they travel, it's only 2 hours by car. Right. So parents are very close, and then you also get these situations where they go to school during the week and then they go home in the weekend, do laundry, and then go back to school, Monday through Friday,
Right.
right? So yeah, it's I think the behavior is changing.
That makes sense though, because you want something to fall back on if you don't feel like you have a group that you feel like you belong to on campus if you live on the dorms. I have a lot
Yeah.
of people who live here in North Atlanta area. They go either to Auburn University or they go to Clemson, and it's about a 2-3 hour drive. And I see
Yeah.
these college kids, they're here every couple of weeks. They're not going to be there the whole semester. They just drop in
Yeah.
on the week a little bit,
Yeah.
which is a lot. I mean, I think it's really beneficial because you still have the roots and the ties to your home, and it just gives you that extra comfort to know that you can come back to something when things are getting a little bit rough. And to your point with
Yeah.
it's doing something alone.
Let me ask you this. So, because we have similar experiences where we left our home countries and we came here, and I don't know if you came here with your family, but think of how valuable that was where you're so far away, you just have to figure things on your own,
Yep.
right? I'm not saying it's not tough. I'm not saying it's, you know, um, but don't you feel like everything you do today, everything you know today about yourself is you kind of separating from
Mhm.
your parents, from the nest, and just kind of figuring out who you are, right?
Yep. It definitely did stretch me. It made me a different person. I'm not the same person I was before because I didn't have that support, right? And I had to figure it out. And there was no way to go home. I couldn't drive home. I couldn't,
Yeah.
So it was rough though, really. I mean, sometimes I'm better for it, but
Yeah.
as a parent, my default is protect,
Yeah. Yeah.
protect the
I mean,
child.
I'm the same way, but I think there is, if you are a higher ed institution, right, and you're very good at targeting your messaging to your right audience, right? I feel like there is a message there to be made to attract people who live farther from your campus than 50
Mhm.
miles, right? By saying, because, if you think about what's happening nowadays, there's this, uh, when you ask Gen Z what their biggest worry is this lack of meaning, right? Like this sense of
Mhm.
what's the meaning of all this, and it's like, hey, this is, you can do this. You can come out here and look at all the resources that we have, and figure out. It's kind of like that army be all you can be
Yes. Yes.
message, right?
Mhm.
And I think universities could adopt something like that. I mean,
Yes.
obviously, it's not going to work to a broader market, but if
Mhm.
you're really good at identifying, some of your prospects, I think that message would work well.
Hey everyone, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far. Quick break to tell you about my new book that I co-authored with Rob Clark called The Attention Gap: Why Great Schools Stay Invisible and How to Fix It. We wrote it for higher ed marketers, enrollment leaders, and anyone trying to reach students in today's noisy, scroll-happy world. It's built from 130 plus episodes and conversations with higher ed leaders from this show, plus Rob's experience growing that tall family to over 4 billion views online. We unpack why your marketing playbook isn't working any longer and what you can do about it instead to fix that. If your team is serious about closing the gap between great programs and real visibility online, this book is for you. Grab your copy of The Attention Gap today on Amazon. And now back to the episode.
That's good pointing out the military there, because when you go through boot camp, they'll break you to build you up to be something better than you were before, or at least
Absolutely.
that it's their mold,
Absolutely.
And you want to come out transformed after 4 years. You don't want to be the same person you were when you stepped out of high school, when you go into college and go into the labor market. So trade schools versus college, this conversation is everywhere right now. We talked about that a little bit too. What do you think people are getting wrong or oversimplifying about that debate? Because, we say college is not for everyone, but so is trade school. I went through trade school before and I hated it. And I went to college and I love it now where I am.
Yeah. I I read a book, and I think we discussed this earlier in some earlier conversations, that I think made a profound effect on me. It was a book that I picked up at a museum actually, um, called Trade Class
Mm,
as Soul Craft,
mm,
and it's basically about, the author. It was kind of semi memoir where the author was talking about how he, got his PhD in philosophy and was head of a think tank for a while, and then decided that, doing some research on trade schools and trade classes through the think tank, decided he wanted to dedicate his time and life to that, left
mm,
his job and opened up a motorcycle repair or a car repair shop. And the entire book is a philosophical discussion of the value of trade classes, right?
mm,
Because if you think about it, most high schools have closed down their trade shops. And the reason for that is because, one, they're expensive to maintain, right? The woodwork shop and the metal shops, they're expensive to maintain. And two, a risk of injury, right? So the school doesn't want to deal with, my kid got hurt and have to go through
mm.
the lawsuits that come with it, right? So now you have all of these young generations that do not get their hands on a hammer, a nail, or I mean, even know how to sew something, right? Like if a button falls off, right? But there's much more value to that from a developmental standpoint than just strictly being able to finish a task, right? It's using your hands really enhances your brain as well. So the whole book was kind of making the case that we need to return these classes in K through 12. But now with AI, with the way technology is going, if you kind of, and again, I don't want to get into a philosophical discussion about technology, but if you look through history, every technological advancement basically has been able to separate the human from the task, right? So we trust technology, mechanics, and now information technology to do a better job than humans, and it actually does, right? Of course, of course, if you give me the type of paper, it'll be full of errors. But if you tell AI to do something, the grammar and everything is going to be correct. The information may be wrong, but you're not going to have that human error in there, right? So it's easier. Same thing with the typewriters. Like, why would you need a whole, room full of typewriters when a computer can, or photocopiers, can do that. So same thing with AI. If you think about, kind of AI, or at least if I think about AI, it's kind of taking that human task work out, right? A lot of the things that a researcher can do by going and finding different data anywhere else, and it'll take 6 months to do, ChatGPT can do it in 10 minutes, right?
Right.
So bringing back trade classes, and now people are kind of realizing, well, this is the kind of thing that I can do, that I am still the main input, right? Like if you're crafting something with wood or fixing a car or something, you are the main input. Nothing can come in and do that. So, and you're seeing that, there's a lot of like HVAC, for example, the demand for HVAC certification has skyrocketed because it's one of those things that once it breaks, you need somebody to come and fix it. So people are retooling. We have this conversation all the time. I'm going to go back to your question, because the question is, if I understood it correctly, like, how do students navigate whether they should go that way or whether they should go to college? I have this discussion all the time with my wife. Both my wife and I went through the traditional, go through education, get your degree, and do what your degree tells you that you can do, right? And we feel like, because that's what we know, we feel like our kids need to do that because it's a safer way to a better life. And statistics also show that people with college degrees have better life outcomes than people without college degrees. But for the first time last year, right, people with high school degrees were finding jobs much, much, much easier than people with college degrees. And if you look at a chart, it's always been like this. And last year, it just went like this, right? So if you had a college degree, now you're at a disadvantage in the job market. But if you don't, you're at a better advantage, because there's more jobs that are not information-based jobs,
Right.
than there are, jobs for college grad students, which is basically information jobs. So we're kind of going through this with my wife. My wife is very, they need to go to college, and I'm like, let's just get them to trade school. If they want to go to college, it's there, right? You can apply for college when you're 22, right? But you do that after you've figured out that now you have a trade, and you need information, right? You have the skill. You just need to know how to use that skill in the broader scheme so that you can make a living.
Yeah. So that's what I actually did. I went through trade school in Germany. I was a concrete finisher, so I finished my 3-year apprenticeship, and then after that, I immigrated to the United States because I knew that's not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. Started over, but yeah, it did. It definitely taught me work ethic. Now, to your point, that high school graduates have a higher success rate in getting a job versus the ones in college. I wonder if the high school grads are less selective than the college grads, because they're like, hey, I got a college degree in this particular field. I want to get a job in that field, and they don't, broaden their horizon or look outside the box a little bit. I wonder if that's part of that reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, that's also, it could be part of it as well. But let's not forget, Meta just let go of 1/8 of his entire workforce, and we're talking about 8,000 of the smartest engineers out there who are able to get a job there and work there, right? So these people are now out in the job market competing with people who just graduated. Of course, there's no chance, somebody who's graduating is, again, obviously I'm simplifying because the salary requirements are going to be different, but you're seeing this across the board, right? Like what's happening is a lot of people that graduate from college are at that point in their career where a lot of that work can be done strictly by AI, right? So if I were a business owner and I had to pay, college grad $80,000 for a task that I can pay a $25 a month service to AI to do, maybe not as good but faster, of course I'll choose that, right? So it's I think it's a tougher market than we think it is.
No, it is for sure. Now you touched on business ownership a little bit, and before joining the higher ed industry, you were in the premium chocolate business, owning your own shop where hospitality is key when marketing to customers. What were some of the first things you noticed where universities just approach marketing differently than the business world?
Yeah, let me take a few steps back because my journey through higher ed is not the traditional trajectory that a lot of people take. I actually started out in traditional brand management in CPG. I was a brand manager in the food industry and chocolate included for about 15 years, managing various brands like Lindt chocolate and things like that for different markets in the US and Europe as well. And then I decided at some point that, okay, I've had enough of office work and packaging and product development. I wanted to do my own thing, so I decided to just open a chocolate shop in downtown DC. And there it was fun because for me, I come from a traditional marketing background. I've also taught marketing in college. It was interesting because you talk about these things and you do them at a big scale, when you're working for a big brand, but now you actually have to see the customer in the face while you're actually handing them the product. And you know right away whether it was great or not. So it was kind of interesting as well, because what a small business does for you is full ownership of your P&L, your profit and loss analysis, right? When you work at a big institution, you're a little bit protected, right? If you lose $1 million, it's considered a lesson. Oh, we lost $1 million. Well, lesson, don't do it again, or and you move on. When it's your own business, you don't have that luxury. Even losing $100, it's $100 that could have gone somewhere else that could be a detriment to your business and your investment and your family as well, right? So the decisions that you make are strictly based on your P&L, right? So when I joined higher ed, which is actually totally by chance, one of the clients at the shop was the president of a small local university here, and he knew my background, so we would talk shop all the time. And one day, and I actually have that in the book, but one day he said, "Hey, we have a marketing meeting. My team. They're looking to spend about." There's this marketing agency. They're proposing a $270,000 spend. Do you mind just coming to, just sitting in that meeting so I have another pair of ears to see, if this is the right thing for us to do or not, right? So I said at this meeting, and again, a lot of these people in the meeting were my customers at the shop. So they're looking at me, they're going, "Hey, what's the chocolate man doing here?" Right? Because we'd never kind of talked about my background. So I'm sitting there at that meeting, and that's the first thing that I noticed, that it's like, money was not even part of the discussion, in the sense that it's because it's not mine. It's not coming out of my pocket. Okay, well, is it $270,000? Okay, well, can you give us like a 10% discount, right? Or can we take this out and make it 200? And you're like, well, that's not what the discussion should be. The discussion should be outcome, right? And if the outcome is what you want, then this is money well spent. But if the outcome is not what you want, then you should start with that premise, right? So long story short, I think they ended up spending roughly about $50,000 and kind of picked up a couple of things after the recommendation, and then he said, "Hey, do you want to come manage marketing for for the university?" Which was a huge learning curve for me, but also it was great because again, I approached it from a money standpoint. What's the P&L? And the first goal there was, okay, can we spend half of the money that we're spending now and achieve the same result?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
and that was perfect because you didn't have to grow, but from a bottom line standpoint, and from a for university president standpoint, that was a great job done, right? So I think that's one of the things that I see in the industry, and the recommendation that I make to a lot of people that I kind of mentor now in the process, where, hey, it's great that you're here. Go get another job.
Right.
Go see how it works somewhere else outside of this industry, and then come back here and use that to improve here. Because if you look at people who have been in the industry, a lot of them have been to the same university for 25, 30 years, right? But you might know the ins and out of your institution, but can you really say that you really understand the market, right? Can you really understand what marketing is doing and how things are evolving? And again, long answer, but one other thing that industries do outside of higher education, it's a thing called benchmarking, right? So for example, like we were in chocolate, one of the things that we would go to a toothpaste company and just look at their processes, right? Completely different products, different ingredients, different everything else. But if we noticed that they had done something in their process that, warehousing or whatever, that worked for us, so of course we would incorporate it in our processes as well. So, and I think, I think I would love to see that in higher ed, where you have, heads of marketing just going to completely unrelated business and seeing how they handle their processes, right? At the end of the day, you're selling a product to a consumer, right? Sometimes we think, well, we're doing education is very different, and we forget that at the end of the day, you're meeting a demand just like the people that are selling toothpaste are, right?
That's right. And the president you met at your coffee shop, he was forward thinking for bringing you in and having a different perspective. And he also talked about a lot of these marketers being in their institutions for the last 20 to 30 years, and they go to the same higher ed marketing conferences where they get ideas from their peers. But why do you think universities struggle to borrow ideas from the outside of the industry?
Because there's zero cross-pollination, right? Like, if all I'm doing is enrollment marketing, advertising, let's say, I mean, in your position, in my position, all we see is marketing agencies that only do higher ed marketing, right? They're only bringing things that they see from other universities. And I'm sure, I mean, I'm not trying to simplify. I'm sure they're very smart. I'm sure they've done work with other institutions, but a lot of the work is actually based on higher ed. So what you're actually doing is a lot of the times, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, where a lot of agencies come to you and what they propose is something that has worked for another university. Oh, look at what GW did. Oh, look at what, so and so did. And if we could kind of retool it and retweak it for our market, we could, we could have these results or better results. So that's one. The other thing is, as a higher ed professional, you're also only going to higher ed, conferences, right? Whereas if you're in the industry, if you work in an industry, every single role has their own trade shows that they go to, right? So if you're in accounting, you go to an accounting show where there's people from, medicine, and there's people from all these different kind of environments. So you're seeing everything. I think our industry is very kind of insulary. And I think that's why I think there's also a lot of sameness, right? If you look at all the marketing materials and you just cover the logo, you couldn't tell what university you're talking about. They all just kind of feel the same, right? Same thing, same beautiful campus, green campus, same smiley face. And if you don't know, you know, what is the main statue at XYZ University, you wouldn't know which university you're talking about. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And that brings me to the thought that when you see these higher ed marketing jobs, they prefer people to come from within the industry, right? So again, somebody from another university to work there instead of looking to people from outside the industry. But I know a college called South College out of Knoxville, Tennessee, and I had Kathleen Stockham, their chief marketing officer, on my show. And she started there 4 years ago. But before that, she was in jewelry television marketing, right? It's completely outside the industry, but she revitalized that college, and they have exploded ever since she joined the university, because she just had ideas from outside higher ed that she brought in, and the marketing has just done such a great job. So I always tell people, maybe, when you're looking for your next marketing leader, look from outside the industry.
Yeah. They are. University of New Hampshire's head of marketing was, somebody from Lind who I'd worked with in the past, and a very, very successful marketing leader, and obviously they're, so I think universities are learning, but again, it's slow, right? Sometimes you don't realize you have a problem until it's too late to fix the problem.
That's right. You want to be there. A lot of leaders obviously are risk averse too, right? Because if they say, hey, I brought this CMO from this college down there, they had a great track record, and if they don't succeed at our university, that's one thing. But if I bring in somebody from the outside who had no track record in our industry, it's kind of on me that I made that gamble. So something to think about as well.
I will also say, though, marketers in higher ed have the toughest job. And the reason for that is because marketing by default is boring, right? In the sense that it takes a long time to build mental and physical availability. You can't just kind of spend the money now and expect, your enrollment to go up by 100% in months, right? It takes such a long time for people to make that purchase. And again, at any point in time, there's only 9% of your actual market that's looking for your product, right? So even if you have a list of people who are age 18, only 9% of them are actually looking for specifically the product that you offer at that point in time, right? And now they have to contend with university presidents who are like, well, what's my enrollment numbers? Where's I need my tuition money. Why are you giving so many discounts and this and that, right? So, and it's never enough, right? So it's a really tough job, and I can see why people that are outside the industry are also reluctant to take it, because the demands are just kind of the demands of the job do not meet what the job really kind of does, right? So you have to have, I think, a president who's a visionary, who understands that this is a long-term investment. This is not going to turn it around. And it's tough, at one university that I was working with, the way the university or the president kind of thought about it is like, I'm spending this much money. How many students do I get to see at the end of the semester? And you're like, well, it doesn't work that way. Technically, if you run the numbers, you should see 30 more students, but they would be spread out over a longer period of time, because they're not out there right now looking for your product. Here's the money, here's the student. And that also makes selling into academic institutions much, much harder, because it's like, well, we're spending the money, but we don't, I want to see the results now. So I think it's a tough industry for marketers.
Absolutely. Great episode, Gjergj. Tell us a little bit about ClearCourse Advisory and how people can connect with you after this.
So ClearCourse Advisory is, the address is clearcourseadvisory.co. So we basically, what we focus on is we look at identifying gaps in your funnel, so both operational and also from a communication standpoint, and work on that, and specifically the messaging. So ClearCourseAdvisory.co, and yeah.
Awesome. And people can connect with you how? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn for sure, Gjergj Dollani, and I'm going to plug in something. I'm about to publish a book, so it goes online. What's the word? You're an author. What do you say? Published it
Yeah, it's going to be published on Amazon, I assume.
on Amazon, specifically starting June 1st, and then probably your favorite bookshop by the end of summer. It's really, I decided to write a book on what I learned from my 4 years managing and running Café Chocolat in downtown DC, and how you can incorporate a lot of those, how I incorporated a lot of those marketing things that I knew to the shop itself. A lot of people have, and I turned it into a podcast. A lot of people have used the podcast to open their own coffee shop. So I figured this would be a good thing too.
Awesome, man. Well, congratulations on the book. And
Thank you so much.
Be sure to tag you after the show so people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, Chris, it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And that's a wrap for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Education Marketing Leader Podcast this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with your friends and your network. And if you ever thought about starting your own podcast, now that you listen to one and you got inspired, reach out to me via DM. We'd love to help you launch your own. We'll take care of everything for you, the scripting, the strategy, the editing, the distribution. All you have to do is show up, connect with your audience, and build your personal brand. So if you're ready for it, let's chat. And for everybody else, we'll see you next time at the Education Marketing Leader Podcast. Take care, friends.